So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what's happening on the connectivity side of things in terms of accelerating the process for people getting on the internet. Just a little bit of background. I've had a bit of a checkered past in telecoms and tech in South Africa. In some circles, I'm known as a weapon of mass financial destruction. So one of the businesses that we had that failed was Mxit. I don't know if you remember Mxit. And I've had a few other businesses that have,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that failed. Some that did well, some that failed. And basically, the culmination of all of that is a whole lot of lessons on what doesn't work. So, what we do at the moment is kind of a process of we've kind of landed on it through a process of elimination of all the things that don't work. But the one big lesson I took out of my years in kind of developing content and applications is until you have enough people on the internet in South Africa, you're not going to have successful businesses on the internet. So you need a big enough total addressable market. You need a big enough audience in your own country to build critical mass if you're going to, you know, create a decent sized business. And there's absolutely no chance you can go outside of your borders if you haven't got a big enough business in your borders. And the way to think of maybe a parallel to that is South African breweries became a global brewer, but it started with an enormous, custom base in South Africa drinking beer. And only once they had kind of established that business in South Africa could they think of going beyond the borders. So, internet businesses in South Africa, anybody trying to exploit the advantages of the fourth industrial revolution, they're limited by the fact that, for all intents and purposes, there's only about 5 million South Africans that are on the internet. So, the important thing to understand about internet access is it's not, for me at least, I mean, this is just my opinion, but for me at least, internet access is about affordability. It's not about, whether you can get a connection. So if all, 95% or almost 100% of all South Africans have got internet access right now, technically. They've got a mobile phone, there's 5G or 4G or 3G on it, and there's base stations everywhere so you can get on the internet. But the vast majority of those South Africans are not using the internet because it's too expensive. So they might use it in a small way, like a WhatsApp here and there, but the true user experience for most South Africans is they walk around with their mobile phone and their data is off. It's a bit like, say, 10 years ago, if I went to New York City, the last thing I would do is leave my mobile data on. I wouldn't roam on the data because I'd bankrupt myself. I'd just get an enormous bill out of the blue and be wiped out. And that's kind of what most South Africans are doing in South Africa. They know if they leave their mobile data on, then suddenly their airtime disappears and they have no idea of knowing what happened to the airtime. Their phone is always connected using the internet in some secret way, updating Google Maps or things are happening. So they don't trust the internet. They don't trust what's happening to the money they put into the airtime. So access is not the issue in South Africa. Affordability is the issue. I've had a few little adventures along the way. And I know quite a lot about telecoms. My dad started Vodacom, so I learned a little bit at the dinner table through him. And I ran iBurst, which was a national wireless broadband business. I helped the city of Tshwane build the biggest municipal Wi-Fi network in the country. We had a business called HeroTel, which became the biggest wireless internet. It's the biggest wireless internet service provider in the country. And then we turned that business into a fiber business. It's now the third biggest fiber business in the country. Sold that business in 2022 and decided that we're going to start a business that's going to be 100% focused on townships. Now, the reason for that, so it was 22, so I'd say in April 2022, we started this business called Fibertime. And the idea behind being 100% focused on the townships was, firstly, it's probably where the need is the greatest. If my kids have already got uncapped internet on top of all the advantages they've got, that's a bit unfair. If the kids down the road in Kaimandi, a township outside of Stellenbosch, don't have those advantages and also don't have internet. But secondly, there's an enormous economic opportunity. There's 17 million homes in South Africa. About 4 million of them are in leafy suburbs. All of those 4 million homes have been passed by traditional fiber companies. About 3 million of them have actually been connected. And that's a 70 billion rand industry. So there's a remaining 13 million homes, which are all in townships, which have not been connected and are not being, they're not on fiber. Not only do they not have affordable internet, effectively saying that the lowest income communities in South Africa pay the most for the internet, but there's an enormous economic opportunity. There has to be. You can't have such a big a market that is unaddressed and not be able to, make money out of it. But some companies in South Africa, some fiber companies, had already gone into the township market with fiber and had not succeeded in making money. And so therefore the conclusion is that there's no money to be made doing fiber in townships. People don't have enough money, so don't put fiber infrastructure into townships. We adopted a slightly different mindset. We said there is money in townships, but the business model for a traditional fiber operator is not appropriate for a township environment. So the traditional fiber company, what they will do is, if you live in Parkhurst, for instance, Vumatel or someone will come put fiber down your street. You'll get a leaflet on your door from AfriHost or Cool Ideas or some ISP saying, would you like fiber? You pay a connection fee, say 1,000 Rand, and then they come and install a router in your home with some fiber in your home, and they put you on a debit order. And you pay, for argument's sake, 500 Rand a month, and you get your 20 meg per second link. Now, that if you try to introduce that model in the township, it doesn't work because people don't have the 1,000 Rand up front, and no one's going to sign a debit order. So therefore, they said it's not going to work. We approached it in a different way. So fibertime comes into a community, a township community, for instance, Alexandria or Khayelitsha. We started in Kayamandi and Stellenbosch. And we said the first step is the router has to be free. So you can't have a barrier to entry for putting fiber into the home. So we make a free install in the home. The second thing is you have to install every single home. You can't wait for some customer to phone you and say, I'd like to install, because you can't get your build costs low enough if you have to keep going back and forth to the township. So you must have one truck roll. If there's 10,000 homes, for instance, Kayamandi, there's 10,000 homes, you must connect every single home to fiber. That means plant poles in the ground, string fiber along the poles, and then from the top of every pole, string fiber from the top of the pole into the home, whether it's a corrugated iron shack or a brick home, into the home. Inside the home, install a router on the wall and make sure that is all for free. So in other words, commit to a lot of capex to ubiquitous install. A place like Kayamandi's 10,000 homes cost about 50 million Rand. And then don't expect people to sign a debit order. So seller pay as you go. In low-income communities, there is money. It's just not necessarily disposable money. So if somebody has an emergency during the month, a medical emergency or something, they can't have committed, a couple of 100 Rand to internet, and now they need 100 Rand for something. So if you make it easy to pay as they go, very important. So we sell a 5 Rand voucher. So for 5 Rand, you get 24 hours of unlimited 100 megs per second internet. If you pay that for the full month, that's 150 Rand for 100 megs per second unlimited uncapped internet. And that kind of brings you to the third thing. You've got to make it a lot cheaper. A 100 meg per second link from Vumatel or one of the other fiber companies will cost you about 1,000 Rand a month. And, most people, the vast majority of people living in townships can't afford that. So you've got to make it much cheaper, but you can't lower the speed. You can't say to people, oh, well, you're poor, so you must get slow internet. It's better than nothing. You've got to say, look, it's got to be world-class internet. It's got to be the fastest internet, but it's just got to be a lot cheaper. So we actually effectively cut the price by 85% because we're charging 150 Rand a month on a pay-as-you-go basis. But the math works because there's so many people living in townships. And if you just take a look at Google Maps or Google Earth and you take a photo of Alex and you take a photo of Bryanston and you try to count how many homes there are in a hectare in Alex and a hectare in Bryanston, you're going to see that's exponentially more homes in Alex, and each home has a lot of people living in it. So there's just so many more people living in Alex than in Sandton. Costs you about the same amount of money to build that infrastructure, but you can sell a lot more vouchers and therefore sweat that network at a lower price and make as good a return. Those are all the theories. We started that in April 2022. We spent about 500 million Rand. I don't like thinking about it too much, but we spent about 500 million Rand in the last 3.5 years doing something that nobody else has ever tried to do properly, and figured it out probably middle of last year. So now we managed to figure out how to build infrastructure in townships, which is not for sissies. The government effectively stops on the side of the township. So if you have a crime problem or if you have an intimidation problem or anything, you don't fund the police or the municipality. You've got to deal with local construction mafias and protection rackets. You've got to deal with lots of things, maintenance issues, local labor issues. And then you've got to build that network. Then you've got to keep your costs below a certain point, and then you've got to sell as many vouchers as you possibly can. But we've kind of figured it out. We're now in 30 townships across 6 cities, 6 major cities, 5 provinces, connect 1,200 homes a day at the moment. We can connect up to 30,000 homes a month. And by March or so, there will be about, just on our network, there will be about 400,000 connected homes. If there's about 5 people per home, so that's about 2 million people that'll be effectively on very affordable, world-class, unlimited, super fast fiber. By 2028, we'll have about 1.8 million homes. By 2032, we'll have 8 million homes. 8 million homes works out to about 40 million people, all on kind of unlimited fiber. Now, that changes the game completely when it comes to people trying to build online education businesses or online employment opportunities or just e-commerce, anything, because now suddenly you've got this enormous audience of people that have previously literally been locked out of the digital economy that are now kind of locked in, are now able to access that kind of world that was kind of trapped behind a paywall, effectively. And that paywall is mobile data. Now, just to give you an idea of the cost comparisons, our average customer in Kayamandi, the amount of data that person uses, for which they pay R5, so they're paying R5 for an uncapped internet connection. If you measure the amount of data they use, if they were spending that money on out-of-bundle mobile data rates, it would cost them R1,450. So it's order of magnitude in terms of the price differential if you're selling an uncapped product versus this metered stuff, megs and gigs. And then there's an exponential impact on the ground that we've been measuring a lot of stuff through the Stellenbosch University's Bureau of Economic Research. There's nothing officially published yet, but we've got some anecdotal stuff in these communities. And I'll just end off with maybe just a description of the exponential impact. And then you guys are obviously very welcome to ask any questions, and I'm open to hear questions rather than just blah 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 into the screen. Not sure if anybody is actually listening, but there was one of the ladies that lived in Kayamandi. She was one of the first homes we installed fibertime into, her name's Isizwe. She has a job in Belleville at a call center. She was commuting every morning and every evening, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, 22 days a month. It comes to about 80 hours a month she was spending in transit. And she was spending R900 a month in taxi. And she was spending all day away from her family. She had no idea whether her kids were going, doing their homework, going to school, coming home from school, what they were doing after school. Once we put fibertime in the home, she could say to her employer, right, I've got a reliable internet connection, and she could afford it, so she could work from home. For R110 a month, she was getting 22 days of uncapped fiber. So that's her cost of transit taken care of, which left her R790 in her back pocket, free money effectively in her back pocket. She used some of that money to enroll for an online company secretarial course. So she had an unlimited internet connection already. So now she could study online. She had some extra cash, so she could use that cash to enroll for something for certification. She was suddenly staring at an extra 80 hours a month of free time, which you could use for studying and also use for family. And the family stuff is the stuff that's hard to measure, is to say, when she wakes up in the morning, she can make sure the kids go to school. She's there when the kids come home from school. She knows whether they've done their homework, and she knows whether they're on the streets or not. And one of the interesting things is she's so grateful that there's fiber in her home, because her kids don't go outside anymore. My wife gets a little bit upset when my children are on their devices all the time inside the house, but she's very happy because it's dangerous for the kids to be on the streets a lot of the time where she lives. And she's always been trying to figure out how to convince her kids to stay inside where it's safe. And, with internet in your home, you don't have to work too hard to convince your children to rather stay indoors. So that's my little story, and open to any questions. I hope that wasn't too short, and I hope that wasn't too boring.
Thank you very much, Alan. That is fantastic work that you're doing. It really is your entrepreneurship orientation and spirit that has made this possible. And so it shows the win-win situation that can arise where people are being benefited on a large scale, and at the same time you're managing to drive a business. It couldn't have been easy. I think it's a fantastic story.
Thank you.
Yes, I don't see any questions in the chat or in the
I
Q&A.
see in the webinar chat, there's a question here. So you're the fiber provider, you're the
Oh,
fiber
yes.
provider and the ISP.
Yeah.
The question from Hamid is, so you're the fiber provider and the ISP? Yes. So fibertime installs the infrastructure and is the ISP that you buy your services from. In a traditional situation, you would, Vumatel, for instance, would put the fiber in your home and then you kind of pay Cool Ideas as the ISP, and kind of complicated. You're not, if something goes wrong, you phone Cool Ideas, they say, it's Vumatel's fault, and Vumatel says, we'll talk to the ISP. So we just go the full
Yeah.
vertical, and it doesn't work otherwise for pay as you go. So we are the full thing. It costs a lot of money. I mean, we burn through about 150 million rand a month at the moment. It'll grow quite a lot. So building these networks ain't not cheap doing this stuff. We have to make a good return, otherwise we can't carry on raising capital. So selling vouchers is, we figured out how to build the networks. Now we've got to figure out how to make sure we sell more vouchers. And that's not always child's play either. But once you kind of get people using the internet for things like streaming sports or e-gaming and things like that, then it's a lot easier to sell the concept of unlimited internet. I thought in the beginning that the big user applications would be TikTok, just general social media stuff. But surprisingly, it's actually online education. That's the big one. I think a lot of moms are buying vouchers for their kids so they can study online after school. So that's good. That's obviously a very positive social impact, but probably down the line, we're going to see a more general trend towards, TikTok. I mean, if you had to ask anybody what they're really using for youngsters, if they have a choice, they're going to be using TikTok. How do they
Of
buy
course.
vouchers? There's another question here from Mohammed. How do people buy vouchers? Very important that you make it super simple for people to buy a voucher. So you can go to any spaza shop, you can give a R5 coin. They give you, it's like they'll have a flash terminal or a Kazang terminal. They'll give you a little slip with a pin on it. You go home, on your phone, you just look for Wi-Fi and you click the Wi-Fi thing and it'll show you all the available Wi-Fi. It'll say fiber time. You click fiber time. It just says enter your pin. Enter your pin and off you go. You can buy a voucher on Capitec as well. So we try to make it as widely available as humanly possible, always try and add new channels. And then we collect it via that vendor. And also interesting, just in case you're interested in the detail, traditionally what happens is you pay for your fiber at home, but then if you're not at home, you can't use your fiber. Okay, so if you go to your neighbor, your mom, or whatever, you need to ask them for their Wi-Fi password or something, right? But the way fibertime works is every single router has the same name. So every single, for instance, in Kayamandi and in Alex, we've got, say, 16,000 connected homes in Alex. Every home in Alex with fibertime in it, the router name is fibertime. So once you've bought that voucher for your device connects to any fibertime router in the whole community. So you can go to your neighbor's house, you can go to the hairdresser, you can go to your mom, you can go home. The utility of your voucher is everywhere. It's not just when you're at home.
Fantastic. Gosh, well, you might have noticed that my connection is unstable. And I'm in that situation. I'm in between my ISP and my fiber provider. And so that just as an explanation, and maybe I should contact you, Alan, after this.
I'll go live in Alex. You'll get better internet in Alex than you'll get in
Yes.
the suburbs.
And I can even get fiber connection at my neighbor. That is just fantastic.
Look, it's a good question, and it was also one of the questions, fiber, wireless, why go fiber? I've had a lot of experience in this industry now for a long time, and I've just realized for a densely populated community, there is never going to be a substitute for fiber for the best internet. The most reliable, fastest internet will always be fiber in a densely populated community. In a
Right.
community like a farm or a lodge or a very kind of sparsely populated rural village, yes, you can use Starlink. You could probably use Starlink. That's probably going to be the answer. It's not going to be wireless, guys, because it's not congested. There's no contention. 1.5 million people in Alex, and you say, okay, you guys must all connect to this one satellite up in the sky. There's going to be congestion. So you're not going to be able to get a fast internet connection. It's probably going to be unreliable, but it's definitely not going to be fast. So fiber is the only way in the world to offer absolutely uncontested, super fast internet to the home for densely populated communities. So the quality question, you can never solve the quality question without having fiber. Anytime somebody tries to solve the quality question with wireless, they're effectively saying, it's better than nothing. You should just be grateful, which is not the right attitude when you're going into a township. I've learned that myself. I mean, you've got to go in with a lot of respect and you've got to go in saying, we're going to give you the best in the world.
Mm, exactly. Yes. Fantastic. There's some questions in the Q&A. Zama Morni says, you mentioned that you face issues with construction mafias not being able to get police and municipalities in certain areas. How do you work around that? And what is the long-term plan in dealing with that?
This is a good question, Zama. Look, so when you go into, firstly, every township's different. To say that, oh, you figured out Khayelitsha, so therefore you figured out Gugulethu and Alex and Tembisa and Mamelodi, that's like you can't say that. It's almost like they're different countries. Like Tembisa is a completely different place from Mamelodi, and Mamelodi is a different place from KwaMashu, and KwaMashu is a different place from Malazi. So that's the first thing. But generally speaking, what you have to do is you go in, you find out who the community leaders are, starting with the ward councillors and the church leaders and the school principals. And then somebody eventually says, oh, you got to talk to this crowd, which is, a local authority or a business forum or something like that. Now you got to talk to a little mafia. And then what they've done is they want you to use local labor. It's basically what it boils down to. So, and we have no problem doing that because it's not a very highly skilled process. You're just digging holes, planting poles, stringing up fiber. We can actually create local jobs. So you should never go into a township and build infrastructure without local labor. You're just asking for trouble. Extremely local labor. Not, you don't just say these people are from Khayelitsha. You've got to say these people are from the ward that we're in Khayelitsha. So there's quite a lot of consultation that goes on. I'd almost say that's like 80% of the job is making sure that you've got community buy-in before you move in. And then when you move in, sometimes things go awry and you have to pull the plug if you have to stop for whatever reason. There's intimidation. We had a couple of our guys were held up a couple of weeks ago. Nobody got hurt, but there can sometimes be political warfare going on inside a community, and you sometimes get caught in the crossfire. You need to be able to pull out. And if you don't have multiple projects all going at the same time, then pulling out hurts your entire business. So we have at any point in time, say 30 or 40 networks all being built in parallel. If 5 of them suddenly have to pause, we can push pause on 5 and we don't lose our whole pipeline. So you have to do the stuff at scale. Otherwise, you're not going to make money and you're not going to keep your promises. I think the long-term solution, I don't think the long-term solution to South Africa is we just have more and more little local mafias that we have to deal with. I think there's not a really healthy way to go about having a sustainable future. So I'd say the long-term future is democracy figures itself out and we put people in charge that can fix the police, I mean, if there's one thing I can tell you right now, the number one priority for most people living in a township is safety and security. I mean, it's just my opinion, but that's what I pick up. I mean, if you're living in Alex, you're not feeling safe. I mean, you're worried about education, you're worried about jobs, but you actually just mostly all day long, especially if you're a girl, not feeling safe. So only the government can solve for that problem, safety and security. So we'd have to fix the government if we want a long-term plan for dealing with mafias.
Thank you, Alan. Busisiwe Alan says, thanks, Alan, for an insightful presentation. How do you navigate regulatory and infrastructure challenges in township rollouts? What advice would you give to entrepreneurs working at the intersection of tech and public good in South Africa and the rest of Africa?
I mean, the regulatory infrastructure challenges, luckily, the only real government involvement is a way leave. You go to the municipality, you ask them for a way leave for building in public space. Some want bribes, you don't pay any bribes, you just wait out the process. Some are very, very cooperative. But that's just process. That's the nice thing about what we're doing. We're not in an environment where there's big incentives or requirements for corruption. The infrastructure challenges, it's like I said, it's once building infrastructure, if you're not using locals, you're going to be intimidated. Sometimes you get threatened with people vandalizing your network unless you pay protection money. So we don't do that either, but you've got to also again consult with consult. I mean, I think once your network's live and people are using it, even the gangsters have children and their children use the internet. So if you want to punish your children nowadays, you take away the Wi-Fi, you make them watch TV. So no one messes with your infrastructure once people are using the infrastructure. You're just going to make sure people get using that infrastructure as quickly as possible. It has no resale value, so it's not like copper. The copper lines with the electricity or ADSL that gets stolen and so they can be resold. Fiber is just glass. It has no intrinsic value. So at least from that perspective, it's more just vandalism that we have to worry about. And there's a question here, what advice would you give entrepreneurs working at the intersection of tech, public good, and SA? I mean, don't give up. That's the advice. That's the advice that worked for me in my life. What really worked for me in my life is don't give up. Just never give up. But that's only applicable if you're doing something you really love, And me personally, I've got a life's mission to get everyone on the internet. I think it's going to make a massive difference. I can look at my kids in the eyes one day and say, I try to make a difference. I try to deal with inequality. I try to make the country a fairer place. I did something with all the privilege that I've been given through birth. I've tried, and that's a lacquer thing to live for. And that's a lacquer thing that keeps you going when you hit your little speed bumps. And we've had a lot of speed bumps and we continue to have speed bumps. But, you push through because it's really for a good reason. It's not just to make money and buy a new car,
Yeah. Fantastic, Alan. I applaud you. And I think everyone can applaud virtually if they can find their reaction button. Thank you very
broad
much
away.
indeed. Thank you for that. And if people are interested in interacting further with you, can they email you, contact you? Thank you very
You're very
much.
welcome. Anybody's welcome to email me. It's alan@fibertime.com. And you're welcome to come visit me in Stellenbosch. We'll take you on a tour of Kaimani. You can see it for yourself. I'll show you the Alex network when I'm in Joburg. So,
Oh,
it's great, obviously, talking in a crowd like this. Obviously, you're all interested and you see the benefits of all of this. But the base layer of infrastructure is needed before we can unlock the digital economy.